Did you know you're statistically more likely to become a millionaire than to rock a six-pack? Why does getting abs seem so ridiculously easy for everyone else but you? Well, I come bearing good news. It's actually not hard at all, and literally any guy, even you, can get abs if you just copy these exact steps in this video. To get shredded as a man, you first need to understand how lean you have to be. So if you look anything like this dude, you're probably sitting around 30%. If this guy seems more up your alley, you're probably around 20%. Now, 15% body fat is typically what we consider the upper limit of visible abs, so don't worry, you're not that far off. 10 to 12% and you're starting to enter Chad territory. Below 10% and you probably have no social life. But hey, at least you dice, bro. Now, maybe you're thinking, alright, so I just need to get lean in order to see my abs. Easy. Well, yes and no. Lowering body fat is essential for ab visibility, but it's only a tiny part of the equation. You could be 10% body fat, but if you haven't actually built your ab muscles, they're not gonna pop. As a quick example, look at my client Honey before we really incorporated ab exercises versus now when he really started smashing out his abs. Bottom line, you have to train your abs if you want them to pop. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how you can get your abs to pop in 60 days with just 2 simple steps: training and diet. So step 1 is training. How do you optimally work out with just a couple of killer exercises? And step 2 is diet. We'll do a quick and dirty breakdown of everything you need to know regarding macros and calories so you are 100% guaranteed to have abs. And by the end, you will have a 60-day roadmap from the start all the way to the end and know exactly what to do. Let's go! Back in the day, everyone used to say abs are made in the kitchen and that training abs was a complete waste of time if you weren't lean enough. The only thing you really had to focus on was just eating right. The claim was you could do crunches until the cows come home, but if you're not lean, you will never see your abs. Sure, diet is a huge part about getting lean, but saying you shouldn't train your abs is like saying I shouldn't train my chest because if I'm not lean enough, it's not going to show anyway. That's absolute nonsense. You need to treat your abs like you treat every other muscle group. Hit it hard, hit it heavy, and make sure you progressively overload over time. Plus, keeping up with resistance training is super crucial for maintaining muscle mass according to research. The problem with a lot of these ab workouts you find online are that they are super high rep, super like burny kind of sessions, the ones you find in like F45, and those don't really do a lot for ab growth. Sure, you feel the burn, but you're not actually pushing your abs close enough to momentary failure. You know the stuff, 100 crunches, bicycle kicks, flutters, all that kind of stuff. Studies on muscle hypertrophy have shown that you need to push your muscles close to failure in order to see them grow. That means adding resistance or difficulty over time so that they actually pop. What this looks like is maybe going to RP 8 or leaving 2 reps left in reserve when you do work out. In practice, that means doing 10 reps of really hyper-focused, stimulating crunches rather than doing like 50 sit-ups while you scroll on TikTok. So what exercises should you really do? Do you need 15 variations? No! In fact, you really only need 2 movements. One is a crunch variation and one is a leg raise variation. These variations basically will cover the entire wall of your abdominal muscles from the top part to the bottom part. My personal favorite is actually the decline weighted bench crunch. What you want to do is find a decline bench, the one that actually tilts you with your head lower than your hips. You want to hold a weight plate or dumbbell against your chest, and you want to perform a crunch with control. Now, I say this because most people don't do it like that. They end up swinging a lot, right? As you crunch up, really focus on squeezing those abs and almost imagine trying to bring your ribcage and pelvis together like you're trying to crush an orange in between. Then what you want to do is just lower back down with control. Okay, now the decline angle actually increases your range of motion a little bit more than, say, a weighted crunch. Just aim for about 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps at about RPE 8 or 2 reps left in reserve. Do this 3 times a week, and if you can hit failure, please do so safely. Each week, try to either add a little more weight or squeeze out an extra rep with the same weight. This is what progressive overload is about. Now that we've covered that, we need something that actually hits the lower part of the abs. Now technically, the rectus abdominis muscle group works as an entire sheet of muscle, but specific exercises can target the lower abs a little bit better. And for me personally, I love the bench leg raise. So similar to a Roman chair leg raise or just a regular leg raise hanging on a bar, the bench leg raise actually has a lot more range of motion involved because you can bring your legs lower than the level of the bench. You could also do hanging leg raises if you're more advanced, but it really taxes your grip endurance, and so that's why I don't recommend it. So what you want to do is lie flat on the bench, make sure you grab the bench behind your head for support, and you want to try your best to do straight leg raises. Now, it is important to make sure that most of your legs and even a little bit of your butt will be off the bench. The more you have your legs off the bench, the harder it will be because of the longer moment arm. You want to keep your legs fairly straight with a slight bend and lift them up until your hips lift off the bench slightly. Now, what we really want to focus on is that posterior pelvic tilt at the top, because that is actually key for fully engaging the lower abs. And then obviously you want to slowly lower your legs back down until your heels make light contact with the ground, and then repeat the cycle all over again. It's really important to make sure that we don't swing or use a lot of momentum because this ain't no circus. So we want to make sure that the abs are actually doing the work. Now, if straight leg raises are a bit too hard at first, you can start with bent knee raises, tuck your knees up instead, and gradually straighten your legs over time as you get stronger. You also want to do 3 sets of as many quality reps as you can, right? 3 times a week, again, taking all sets to at least 2 reps in reserve, otherwise known as RPE8. And since adding weight to leg raises is a tricky process, I would encourage you to focus more so on controlling the movements, getting more reps in, and maybe having more of your legs off the bench to progress instead of just focusing on adding more weight. Alright, so you train hard, you progressively overload, and maybe you even walk 10,000 steps a day. But what about nutrition? Well, to get abs in 60 days, we want to approach this as science-based as possible. We want to be able to preserve as much muscle mass and lose as much fat in just 60 days. So the first thing you gotta know about yourself is, what is your actual body fat percentage? Why? Because it tells us roughly how much fat we need to lose and what our macros and calories need to be. Now, you don't need an expensive DEXA scan like this or even skin fold calipers like this in order to get an accurate body fat percentage measurement. Honestly, using an in-body machine like this is good enough. It gives you a great starting point and you can very much just build from there. So having a starting body fat percentage allows us to calculate your fat-free mass, your FFM, otherwise known as the total weight of everything in your body that isn't fat, which includes muscle, bone, water weight, glycogen. How we calculate this is we take your current body weight, multiply that by 1 minus your current body fat percentage. So let's bring in our man Steve. So let's use Steve as an example. He's 175 centimeters tall, 30 years old, very sedentary, and he weighs 85 kilograms. He's also about 25% body fat. So this puts Steve at a 63.75 fat-free mass weight. Now, what we do want to find out next is his target body weight, which we can figure out by using this equation above. And that puts his target body weight at 75 kilograms, which means all he has to do is lose 10 kilograms of fat. Now, these numbers are not absolute. They really are just a rough estimate, but they do give us a very nice ballpark figure to work with. Granted, Steve is not going to be losing just fat during this 8-week period. He's probably also going to lose water weight, glycogen, and muscle mass. So not all 10 kilos are going to be fat. Now, what do you do with all this information? It's actually really easy. Just hop on Google, look up calorie calculator, click this first link, get to business. You want to key in Steve's details, but you should make sure that you are clicking sedentary when picking the physical activity level. Because unless Steve is slaying zombies or traversing across biomes, he is most likely a sedentary busy professional. And I always suggest initially underestimating the amount of calories required for a cut rather than doing the opposite and then having to cut your calories halfway whilst you're in the deficit. It's gonna make you feel worse about the whole thing. Research has shown that people overestimate their physical activity levels anyway, so it's better to err on the side of caution. Once you key that in, you're gonna get a rough estimate of your TDEE, otherwise known as your total daily energy expenditure, otherwise known as your maintenance calories. It's also gonna give you calories for what you need to be in a deficit and what you need to be in an extreme deficit. So cool, we know all this information, but how much calories should you be consuming on a daily basis? A commonly touted target is to be in a 20% daily deficit, and as a very broad, simple rule of thumb, for every 100 calories that you are in a deficit on a daily basis, you will lose 100 grams per week. However, to see abs in 60 days, we can't go low and slow like that. For example, Steve's maintenance calories is 2,159 calories. Putting him in a 20% deficit means that he is still consuming 1,727 calories, right? If we do the math, that means that he's only really going to lose about 3.4 kilos over the next 60 days, which is a far shot from the 10 kilo goal we talked about just now. Him being at 25% means he would have more fat to spare, which means he should be closer to a 40 to 50% deficit on a daily basis, which makes sense because when you do the numbers, that puts him at about 1,300 calories at a 40% deficit. Now don't get me wrong, faster weight loss is almost always worse than a slow rate of weight loss, right? Low and slow is the key here. Super aggressive deficits for a long period of time is very unsustainable. It makes you hate your life and you end up losing a lot of muscle mass along the process. So what really is the point? Well, the point is that people want results quick, including yourself. So if you want to see your abs in 60 days, be prepared to lose some muscle mass and be prepared to dial in because it's not going to be as easy as a slower, longer cut. Alright, so now we have our daily caloric targets. But what about the holy trinity that is macros? Proteins, carbs, and fats. Let me break it down for you. Most people in Singapore swing either one of which ways. One, they don't consume enough protein, which is a lot of people I know, a lot of my clients, consuming like fewer than 100 grams of protein per day. And on the other hand, I have other clients who are super protein focused and they're eating like 180, 200 grams of protein a day. There are a lot more cons of not eating enough protein because you don't provide the essential building blocks for building muscle, right? Recovery is not going to be as optimized. And on top of that, you're not going to be satiated, you're not going to feel full. I guess the only pro of like having less protein is that you can allocate more calories to your carbohydrates and to your fats, which means you might be enjoying your diet a little bit more. Obviously, I'm not going to recommend that any time of the day. Now, what is the problem with consuming a bit too much protein? Well, let's say Steve is consuming 200 grams of protein. That would mean he wouldn't have enough calories allocated for his carbs or fats, which will make him feel a lot more miserable with his diet because he's going to feel like he's missing out on a lot of food. Granted, he's already consuming 1,300 calories, so he's not going to be having whatever he wants to eat anyway. And so my suggestion is really to just have 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And it doesn't seem to really matter how much of a deficit you're in, according to research. 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight seems to be sufficient. Now, again, the only real benefit of having more protein is that it is very satiating. It keeps you full, which is a major factor when you are in such a huge deficit. Next up, we got fats. Now, a lot of people think, hey, since I want to cut out the fat, I should not be consuming any dietary fat at all. Wrong! Dietary fat is crucial for maintaining your hormone production and a lot of other body processes. A good minimum is allocating about 20% of your total daily intake to just fats alone. For maximum benefits, a fat intake of 40% of your total daily intake is great as long as that doesn't sacrifice your carb intake too much. But if you enjoy fattier foods like most of us do, you can bump it up from 20 to 30 or even 40%. So again, for Steve, that's about 44 grams of fat on a daily basis. So that's it. Once you've calculated your proteins and your fats, the remaining calories goes to your carbohydrates. And for Steve, that looks like 76 grams of carbs. So this is his macro split. But what should I be eating? What should I eat? So let's talk about food choices. What should you be eating? Technically, from a pure fat loss perspective, a calorie is a calorie. There was literally a professor who ate a Twinkie diet and he still lost a lot of weight. But for a sustainable 60-day cut, I really highly suggest against it. Here's why. Because what you eat will really determine how you feel throughout this entire process. You want to maximize foods that increase satiety, that make you feel as full as possible. And these are called voluminous foods or volume-dense foods. We always want to prioritize volume-dense foods and not caloric-dense foods. Caloric-dense foods are things like pizzas, ice cream, fries, stuff like that. So you want to focus on high satiety, nutrient-dense foods like whole grains, your fibers like vegetables, fruits, Greek yogurt, lean protein sources. You get what I'm saying? In fact, research has actually shown that increasing your fiber intake leads to a 10% reduction in the calories consumed on a daily basis. So yes, eat your damn veggie!
Eat your green vegetables.
So to summarize the 6-pack diet setup, here's what you gotta do. Step 1. Calculate your maintenance. Step 2. Follow the table shown and pick your daily deficit percentage. As you can see, if your body fat percentage is in the 20s, you are almost certainly overweight. Step 3. Get around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Step 4. Keep your fats around minimally 20 to 30% of your total daily intake. Step 5. Fill the rest of your calories with carbohydrates. And step 6. To ensure that you actually adhere to your diet across 60 days, you want to prioritize minimally processed foods, whole grains, fiber, and drinking a lot of water to make sure that you feel as full as possible. If you do all that, you will magically lose fat. Except it's not magic, it's just science. Now you might be thinking to yourself, everything seems easy to do, so why aren't more people doing it? Oh, it's because these only really work when all the stars align and you don't have to travel for work, you don't have to meet clients for dinner, you don't gotta work overtime. But I hardly ever hear that being the case for most of my busy professional clients. So if you feel like you're in that same position where you don't want to actually think about tracking your numbers and weighing out all your food and you just want to get to the doing, you can click the link down below to book a free strategy session with me. We can see if we're a great fit to work together, help you get abs in just 60 days. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao!